Welcome to Words with Witte. I'm your host, Anna Witte, and I created this podcast to talk with people who have inspiring stories. We'll chat about how they got started in their respective careers to where they are now and all of the good and the bad in between. So I'd like to welcome my second guest on the show, excuse me. Her name is Venita Aspen. She is a model and influencer and the founder, director, and producer at the Aspen Agency. So she clearly has a lot on her plate daily, but Venita, thank you so much for making time for us today. I'm so excited.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me.
How are things in Charleston? How are you doing in quarantine?
Quarantine's good. We opened back up as a city, I think in like mid-May. So it's been kind of interesting. We've already had some places having to close again because they will have an employee that comes in and like they'll test positive for COVID, and then they just have to shut the whole thing down. So it's been very interesting to see who's staying open, who still decided to stay closed. Like my favorite wine shop, they have stayed closed except for curbside since the beginning. And
who's your favorite wine shop?
Graft Wine Shop.
Yes, my mom does CrossFit over there. I've seen that.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, Femi and Miles, those boys are great.
Well, I will just get started with my questions. My first one is, what did you study in school, and what were your plans and your dreams for yourself and for your career?
Ooh, okay, so I studied in school culinary arts and business. That was not my first thought. I thought I was going to be a pediatric surgeon. Then I decided that I didn't want to do that because I didn't like math. And I felt like there was going to be a lot of math leading up to doing that. And I decided to let that thought go. And I went to culinary school, and I wanted to mesh together fashion and food, kind of like a Nordstrom where they have like shopping and they have like a cafe.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my goal. And I decided to go to school for culinary arts to learn technique and style. And I didn't feel I didn't feel like it was necessary for me to go to school for fashion because I felt like I was kind of already hip to like the industry and like knowing what was going on in it. So I went to culinary school and I graduated. And after that, I cooked in 2 restaurants in Charleston. And it just wasn't for me. I loved it, but like being a female in the kitchen is just not fun on a day-to-day basis. So I decided to leave that and like got into fashion. And I worked at like Kate Spade, and I worked at a local place called Ibu Movement. And from there started my whole journey into everything. I worked at Ibu, decided to leave, wanted to work for the same style company, but bigger. So I left and went to New York and worked for someone else, and then decided that that wasn't for me. And I came back home, sat through 6 months worth of depression, and now here we are.
So do you still like kind of do you still like dabble in cooking for yourself? Like now that no restaurants are open?
Oh yeah, of course. So I cook almost every meal. And right before quarantine started, there was a pop-up shop at a place called Culture Coffee or Culture Collective. I don't think I'm saying it right, but there's a girl named Allie who told me that I needed to incorporate my food more into my Instagram. So at the beginning of quarantine, I started like creating these little videos showing like what I would make for breakfast and how I cut my grapefruit and like the quick way to do it, and like with oranges and watermelon and everything like that. So I kind of like fell in love with it again, and almost toyed with the idea of like going back to school for it.
Oh, recently?
Yeah. But
Cool.
I decided that I can always just brush up on my skills. I don't necessarily have to go back to school for it.
Right. So you haven't written it off. You're not like fashion focused.
I haven't written it off yet. No.
That's cool. Well, you're so young. Like you can pivot whenever you want.
Yeah, I have plenty of time to decide if I want to do that or let fashion go and go back to culinary.
So how did you get into fashion, and who's like your style? What's your style inspiration?
How did I get? I guess I got into fashion because at 16, wanting to model and like not knowing where to start, I just kind of like dove into the industry. I did all the research that I could. I made my mom subscribe to every single fashion magazine you could think of for me. watched all the shows and like the old documentaries, because at the time, believe it or not, Netflix wasn't a thing, which is so crazy to think about.
I know.
And that's how I put myself in that space, not knowing a whole lot about it, but enough where I felt like I could carry my own within the industry. And I would say that my style icon, I mean, I always gravitate towards classic with like a twist. Like I love a good like Ralph Lauren ad, J. Crew, Gap, like just the staples. But like I love adding like a twist to it with like a good piece of jewelry or like a fun shoe and just giving it its own like vibe. But yeah, that's where I lean with my inspiration. Cool. Mm-hmm.
So how did you get into the influencer, if that's what you call it, the influencer world? Did it kind of fall in your lap, or was it something you were pursuing?
It definitely fell into my lap. So I started using Instagram like everyone did back in 2012, 2011. It's just so crazy to think that that's how long ago, or like that's how long we've all been on Instagram. But I started using it then just like everyone else, like a casual user, like posting my food and like what I was doing in the morning. And I decided that I was going to start uploading my modeling work to Instagram and trying to use that as like a portfolio, because I didn't have the best portfolio. And if I'm being honest, I use Facebook a lot of the times, because like that's back when like you could reach out to people via Facebook and like these local boutiques and brands, and like they respond to you. So I started putting those images on Instagram, and then brands started to like slowly reach out to me about like working, because they thought that I was like promoting a product in an influencer way, but I was actually modeling, not being an influencer. So that's kind of how I fell into it. I'm not mad at it.
Yeah.
No, it keeps me happy. It's definitely an interesting field to be in, that's for sure.
Yeah. Is it probably really competitive too? I'd say like, maybe not, I could be completely wrong, but it just seems like a field where now it seems kind of saturated. But everyone kind of has their own like flair, their own personality, and you kind of make your own audience.
Yeah, and when people say things like saturated, I always give the analogy of like when you walk down the bread aisle, it's 112 different types of bread, but are brands that sell bread, but the main goal is that you're getting bread. You just have to find one that you can relate to. So it might be a saturated industry, but like I think every industry is saturated when you really like break down like how many people can actually do the same thing. But it's just like you have to make yourself stand out from the rest and attract the people that, you know, naturally gravitate towards you.
Right. I can relate. My field's pretty similar.
Yeah.
So how did you get into modeling? I read a little bit on your blog about how you got interested and kind of your time in it. But talk to us a little bit about modeling and what that has looked like for you.
So I started when I was 16, and it was just kind of like I can do this type thing. I always flipped through a magazine and I never saw someone that looked like me or someone that I could relate to. And I said, okay, well, how can I fix that? I said, well, maybe I can be the person that steps into that shoe. So I started local, and I just started reaching out to photographers, doing TFP, which is straight for photo, which I don't even think people do that anymore. And I started using that to my advantage, and like, you know, I would be the one to style and set up the shoot, do my own makeup, and like figure out what look that I wanted to go for, and then use those images to try to push to a boutique, be like, hi, like this is what my modeling work looks like I would love to be able to work with you if you're interested, like let me know what you think. And that's kind of how I got started. And then from there, putting it on Instagram, and then like just growing that platform and like reaching out to brands that way on Instagram. And then from there, that's landed me Target and Old Navy, Sutter Home Wines, like some really cool brands.
Yeah, and that has to do with, and we'll get into that next, but with the Aspen Agency, right? Like you've worked.
No, those are two separate things.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay, cool. That's really cool. So you have a background in styling, you have a background in modeling, you've got a huge platform on social media. So you obviously were doing really well in all three of those. So why was the Aspen Agency the next step for you?
The Aspen Agency came about when I moved back home from New York to Charleston, and I had no idea what I was doing. So at that time, I felt like, okay, well, I went to school for one thing. I didn't end up using it. Then I decided to follow my heart. That didn't work. So like, I was like, what's next? And I wanted to be the person that handled a lot of the shoots. And I also realized when I came back home that I'm not always going to be able to be the person in front of the camera. Sometimes I need to be behind it. So like, what is the best way for me to still be in my industry, but like not be the model in the situation? And I was just like, oh, styling. So technically it started out with just styling. So I did wardrobe, prop, and food styling, and I started as an assistant. And I kind of took that, and when I got bored of assisting, I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to say I'm a full-time stylist and like just take it as it comes, you know? And I ended up doing that, and it worked out great for me, but I felt like I was still missing something. So I decided to then just say that I was a producer. You know, like people always ask me, like, how did you figure out? And I was just like, I don't know. I woke up one morning and said, hey, I can do this. And you know, I started doing the research and asking questions and like reaching out to producers that I had worked with and seeing like what is needed, and did they think that I was capable of doing something like that with like no experience? And I got the same story. Just say that it's what you're doing, or if someone asks you if you can do something, do it and figure it out later, you know? So, and that's kind of how I like push that, that brand. And the goal behind the Aspen Agency is to be able to create marketing collateral for brands who might not necessarily be able to do it through another production company, because productions are very, very expensive. So, and there is no middleman for small businesses. It's either you're spending $100,000 or you are spending no money at all and you hate what you're getting out of it. So I decided to create a middleman for everyone. So in times like Corona, it works for large brands and small brands because like the budgets have been scaled back, but it's still workable for me and my team to receive full day rates, and like we are not losing anything by doing it.
So. I love that. That's so cool.
Thank you.
So how did it turn into, like, rewind just a little bit, how did it turn into what seemed like an idea and you just giving yourself a name as producer into like the business itself? You have a team and having stable clients.
So I have a best friend named Jesse Volk, which I guess to give you a little more backstory is I almost give him I give him the torch, or I guess the key when it comes to me being an influencer, because my first influencer partnership was with Daniel Wellington and he shot it. And ever since that moment, I have just been doing a lot of influencer work, and it started out with his great photography. Mm-hmm. So we would like tag team together if a client like reached out to me locally, and I'd be like, well, I have a photographer. And then that's how we kind of got started. So it was just like me and him. And then it turned into like me, him, and a makeup artist. And then I started removing myself from the shoots, and it'd be myself as a producer, him as a photographer, and makeup artist, and then I'd have talent, you know? So it just kind of like built as it went on, which I'm happy that we weren't afraid to just kind of like build on it versus like trying to just get it right the first time. Mm-hmm. And like, if you don't get it right, like you get sad. Like I love the trial and error of what I do. It's my favorite part.
Yeah. Do you feel like the Aspen Agency has really helped you be more well-rounded, like as a, like professionally, I guess I would say, like, you know, what goes into when you're the model, when you're in front of the camera, you know what they need from you on the other side, because you also work in that position.
Right. I think everything that I've done before that has allowed me to be well-rounded and to be able to drive the Aspen Agency in the way that we do. Because without me doing the modeling and like working with food and like knowing how food should look on a plate and like dealing with props and like working under people, I don't think I would be able to be as well with the agency if I didn't do all of that other stuff.
Right. Is the Aspen Agency something that you want to continue forward, or do you have like a preference in anything that you do?
You know, I love it all. Like, and I love the fact that, you know, some weeks I'm doing all influencer work, and then like another week will go by and it's just like I'm only doing Aspen Agency stuff. Like I like the idea of like always doing something.
Mm-hmm.
And it keeps me on my toes, and it definitely keeps me, I'm constantly learning and like being educated in my own field like every single day, because I'm constantly going back and forth between those fields and like working with someone new and like learning how someone does something here, which I can then incorporate into the agency.
I think a lot of times people think they look at people's businesses who are successful and thriving, and they forget that people start somewhere.
Right.
Where can you tell us a time that maybe you made a mistake or something didn't work well in your career so far? Or maybe just like an obstacle you faced.
I guess an obstacle. I try not to look at anything that I do. I try not to look at anything as I like that I do as a mistake if it doesn't go right, because it's just like all a part of the learning process.
Right.
And it's hard not to beat yourself up once those things happen, but then once it's past, you're like, oh, I needed that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I guess my biggest obstacle is when I decided, so the Aspen Agency is 4 years old, but I didn't decide to take it seriously until last year. And I went to get my website done by someone that I'd never worked with before. And I think that was the biggest obstacle that I faced, because I put out a certain amount of money and I never got a website.
Wow.
And I never heard from the person. They just kind of disappeared. And that was a huge obstacle, because it makes you feel like, okay, well, is this a sign for me to not do this? Like, should I not be trying to pursue this? Because like everything that I've tried to do leading up to this moment has been a sign, but like you kind of just brush it off. Like, it's fine. Like, I just have to push through. And it's like, okay, was that one of those things that I should have just set aside, or should I have pushed through it? And I decided to push through it. But like, that was rough. That was very rough, because like, you know, you spend a year building a website and people say, oh, it'll take 4 months. And you know, in the back of your head, you're like, maybe in a year and a half, my website will be ready, because other things come up. It's not the only thing you're working on. And it's easy for, even if it's a project that you love, it's easy for it to be on the back burner when other things are like happening. And if you can still get clients and your website's now down, you don't really think about your website. You're like, oh, it's fine. Like, I'll get to it. And that definitely was, I mean, I still get like upset just talking about it. I'm sure you heard my voice change. It's just like, it's such an upsetting thing, because you, as a business owner, you always expect good business from other business owners, and you know how businesses should be run. So it's just like a darn, you know?
Yeah. And the sad part about it too, and I've had people tell me that too when I've made mistakes, and I still like 2 a.m. it's like in my head and I can't stop thinking about it. But like, unfortunately, it's probably going to happen again, because that's the way life is.
And you just have to live with that. And like, now, of course, I do what I can to like warn people and be like, make sure you do this kind of research when you are, I mean, even if you're spending $1, but like, if you're spending an X amount of money to get something done and it's for your business, like, take all the time you need and like, don't rush into it. And which I don't felt like I did, but I just wish that I listened to the signs when I saw them.
Well, you also didn't know any better, because it's not like you'd been there before.
Right. Like all websites that I had done before this, I had done on my own, stayed up till 3 a.m., just typing it all out, making it look good enough to say that I have a website, and going on about my day. But like, I wanted to take the Aspen Agency seriously, and like get branding and fonts and these beautiful colors. And I wanted to be able to design something from the ground up myself. And
Are you one of those people who has like the idea of the Aspen Agency like before you even like buy the LLC, or are you like a yes?
I'm definitely, that's me 100%.
Yes, but I relate. You expect it to be done the next day.
Yes. But like, I know it won't be, but like, I expect things to like move quickly.
Right.
Or like my other work to come to a halt because I'm working on something else. And it's like, it doesn't work like that.
Yeah. Do you have any mentors or peers that have really helped you along the way while you were growing the Aspen Agency?
Not really.
Yeah.
I've never been one to have a mentor. Like everything I've ever done is because it's what I wanted to do. Like, you know, my mom wasn't a model, so like she couldn't tell me like how to go about things. So I had to learn it on my own. And like I also didn't know anyone at the time trying to do what I was doing. And like, you know, like my dad didn't work in the fashion industry. So even with that, like I had to learn that on my own. Like granted, I get my sense of style from my mom for sure, but like as far as working in the industry goes, neither of them had worked in that industry. It was just something that I wanted to like do. So I just kind of set out to do it.
Right. So you spent a little time in New York, and did you feel like New York was a place that you needed to go to start building your career, or did you go because you had opportunities there?
I went because I wanted to do something different. And that backstory is I went to New York for the first time in my life, June 2016, 15.
After college?
Yeah.
Wow.
So I did college, and I did not work in the culinary field long. I think I lasted a year and a half, and I was out of there. Mm-hmm. So shortly after that, working in fashion, and then I decided to go to New York. But before that, I had worked Charleston Fashion Week, and there was a designer by the name of Carlos Campos, and he is based in New York, and they were having Men's Fashion Week. And I just thought, why don't I reach out and see if like, you know, he'll cover my flight and like maybe like handle all my meals, and I'll figure the rest out. Like I'll find a friend, I'll figure it out to stay with someone. And I did that. So I went to New York that June for almost 2 weeks. First time in New York ever. Wow. I come home. I decide that I'm going to move. I was like, I'm going to do it. Like in New York, it was the first place I had been by myself, you know? So like, of course it's like, everything's exciting. Like this is so new. It's fresh. Like, I don't want to be at home anymore. I want to do this. I want to live in New York. And I just did it. I decided that I was going to find a job that August. I basically found a company that I wanted to work for. We set up the interview in September, and on my first day of work was October 6th. So like,
yeah.
Like, I did not waste any time doing this at all. And I didn't last in New York long. I tried to, but it just didn't work out. And it was because of the job I had, which I can't get into, but it just wasn't the right fit. And I had done everything I can to like make it work. And then I was looking for other jobs while I was there. I was doing things on the side, like just doing anything I can to make sure I could stay in the city. And, you know, I just decided one morning, I got up and I said, I'm just going to go home. Like, it's okay that it doesn't work. New York will be here forever, and I can always come back. And that's what I did. I made that decision. I think it was a Wednesday morning, and that Friday afternoon, I was back in Charleston. Wow. Like when I move. Like I don't really time. Like I didn't bring furniture up there. I left it, the furniture that I did have. And I went to New York with a carry-on and one suitcase. And that's what I came back with. And I just decided like, it's okay that it doesn't work. And then I ended up starting after I went through that little like stint of depression and getting back into work, I started reaching out to the brands that I made relationships with while I was in New York for modeling purposes. And then that's how I got lucky and tied in. And now I do best of both worlds. I go to New York for work, and then I come back home to Charleston.
That's great. I love that. And so like your time in New York wasn't wasted at all. You made some good contacts.
Yeah, I think it was definitely needed. And I have no idea where I would be if I did not take that moment to like try and do something different. And like New York and like see what life was like there, and like what it was like to live in a larger city. Because, you know, Charleston, don't get me wrong, Charleston is a city, but it's not New York.
So you've been in Charleston ever since. So why has Charleston been the place for you to grow your career?
This is where I got my start. I would never have started modeling if it wasn't for the small local businesses here that gave me a shot when I had no idea what I was doing, you know? So it's almost like, even if I don't end up here forever, I needed to start here because I knew I had people that would support me here. And like, if I came to them with a new idea, they would be like, okay, let's do it, or let's work it out, or we'd love to work with you. And that's how I was able to build my portfolio as a model, and it was also how I was able to build my portfolio as an agency owner. So Charleston supports me.
Yeah. Who's
Yeah.
been your favorite brands to work with the Aspen Agency, or like the biggest project you guys had?
Biggest project, we actually just had it. We did a shoot for Stella Artois, the beer.
Oh, nice.
They are coming out with a new beer called the Summer Solstice, which I'm sure is already out now. And we created all of the imagery here, like right around the corner.
No way. Where are they? No, they're based. Where are they based?
I don't know where Stella's based, but their ad agency is based in New York.
Okay. So how did you get that connection?
So I had a connection with that ad agency because the founder is from Charleston.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So everything always comes back to Charleston. There's always some type of connection to Charleston somehow, which I kind of love,
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And you're from here too. So that's really cool. All right. So I'm going to change the direction of the conversation just a little bit. But in the past few weeks, the conversation in the country has definitely changed towards racial injustice. And I have to say, you've done a really beautiful job on your Instagram, just providing information, but also your thoughts. Mm-hmm. So my question is, what has been your experience as an influencer, a Black influencer and woman in the South?
As a Black woman in the South, you kind of already know that you will be the last resort for a lot of people. You won't be the first person they call. And that's just the sad reality, which I feel like it is changing and moving into the right direction with all the movement on social media and people just being vocal and persistent about the change and the fact that it needs to happen, and that these things are unfair to Black people. As an influencer, I definitely noticed the pay gap. I just got signed as an influencer in January. So before January, I was doing it all by myself. So
what does that mean? What does that mean you were signed as an influencer?
So I have representation. So I have a talent manager. Okay. So I was doing everything my manager is doing for me now by myself up until January. So like negotiating and like figuring out the price and like usage rights and everything like that. And I am fortunate to have friends like Carly and Ashley Brooke and Jillian Attaway on Instagram. Because if I noticed that we were doing the same gig, I would always ask them, hey, how much are you getting paid for that? And they tell me. And then I'd realize that, I was getting $500 to $600 less than they were. And I would either have more followers and more engagement, or, like the quality for me would be different from the quality from them because of how we shoot. But like I was always getting paid less. So that was like a sad reality, I guess, when you realize that. And it wasn't with every job. It was just that when I noticed that we were working the same ones, I would always ask, and I'm thankful for them and their transparency and telling me like, hey, this is what I'm making to do this, and realizing that it wasn't the same and we were literally being asked to do the same thing.
Wow. Yeah. So did you ever bring it up to them pretty straightforward?
Yeah, I did that with 3 brands, and I kind of just let them know, thank you so much for reaching out and asking me to do this. I know I have signed a contract stating that I will oblige to what you have asked, but at this time I'm going to have to step down because it has been brought to my attention that I'm getting paid less than the following counterparts to do the same thing. And sometimes I'd get a response, sometimes I wouldn't.
Right. Was the response normally like a positive and an apology, or was it?
It was just like well, your numbers are, and it's like, they're the same as the other person you're paying more. So, and I wouldn't respond after that. It was sad, but then I had to realize that, other things will come. So I had to do it like that and just next. But I'm very much a next individual. Like if something does not work right for me, I'm not going to sit and dwell on it. It's like, okay, what's next? Like, what can I do different the next time? Or like, what is coming to me now versus just sitting in what left me and like what's not meant for me.
In the past few weeks, have you seen a change?
Oh yeah, for sure. There's definitely been like an influx of people reaching out and wanting to work and wanting to partner, especially the brands that I may have reached out to, months ago that wouldn't respond, and now they want me to be the first person that works with them to do X, Y, and Z. Some of it is authentic, and some of it just feels like they're trying to still check a box. So the ones that I feel are inauthentic, I just don't work with. And it feels good to know that I have the option now to not work with them, where I feel like, 6 months ago, yes, the option was there to not work with them, but the chances of me being able to work with that brand again were probably slim to none if I were on to turn them down. So
how have you navigated that, like knowing who you want to turn down and who you want to say yes to?
My manager and I work on that, and I will read an email, and if I think it's worth me working with them, then I'll respond with a positive and connect the two together. But if not, I would just let them know that at this time that my schedule's full, or I'm not interested, or maybe they should reach out at a later date, because it's almost trendy right now to like work with Black people, and I want to see how long this is going to last for a lot of these brands. And I'm hopeful, but at the same time, I'm not, because there's an example, like Chanel did the, Amplify Black Voices post, and 2 days later, they put 45 Instagram posts up in one day, and it was gone.
I watched your story talking about that.
Yeah. So it's just, I'm waiting to see what 6 months look like from now. And I'm going to take advantage of whatever is coming now. So it'll be okay in my area of the world. But like, I fear that in this area for other individuals, it's not going to look the same. The things that I now have to my advantage are my follower count and the type of engagement I get, which I had a good following before, but now it's tripled since 2 weeks ago.
Do you like that?
I haven't decided yet.
Yeah.
Like, I really haven't. Like, it's like, it's the thing that you want. You're always working to a goal. You're always working to get to a higher number. And you kind of forget like what comes with that. Everyone's not always positive, and everyone's not sending a happy DM. So like, those are the things that you have to now think about. And now there are even more feelings at risk of hurting, or by saying the wrong thing by accident, or even if you say the right thing and someone else takes it wrong, you have to deal with that. So I don't know if I like it yet.
Yeah, that was one of the questions I wanted to ask you, because obviously in the past few weeks, a lot of people have been saying, follow this Black influencer, follow this Black foodie or whatever. And I just was curious if those people like felt it was just because they were Black, or because those people genuinely thought they made good food or they had great style. And
I definitely think it's probably a strong mix of both. I definitely was fortunate to get the messages where it was like, after I did the Instagram story with Sophie, when she stated, I want people to follow me for me, not because I'm Black. And I had people message me saying, I'm following you because I like your style, or I'm following you because X, Y, and Z, or I like your hair, I like the way you wear your headbands, or whatever. So that felt good, but I'm sure there was a lot of white guilt there, because Instagram also didn't do a good job of creating an algorithm that works for every influencer. They created an algorithm that works for white influencers only. If you look up the hashtag influencer, you only see white bodies, and there's every type of influencer in the world. Mm-hmm. So there are a lot of things in that statement that need to be changed, obviously, like Instagram, which they said that, which was nice. They made a statement, the founder did. So we'll see what happens with that and see if it changes.
Sorry, go ahead. Finish what you're saying.
No, it's okay. Because I felt for a moment there that I didn't answer your question.
No, I wanted to touch on the algorithm part. Because I've seen that even before this movement. I saw that and I was, what is an Instagram algorithm, and how do you think, or how do they do that?
So remember back when Instagram first started, and you would see people based on the order you followed them in?
Like so when they posted it, or like with...
Yeah, so when they posted. So like, say you followed like 6 people, then as soon as they post, you'll see those first 6 people, and then we just go in order by how you were following them. Mm-hmm. Instagram like switched the algorithm up, and then it became like a engagement thing. So like, if you had high engagement, you were seen more. which then caused the whole movement, and not, I guess I shouldn't use the word movement, which then caused a disruption, where it was like people didn't feel validated because they had a high number and they weren't getting a certain amount of likes, which then made Instagram take the likes away, where you as an individual can go to your profile and see the likes, but no one else can see them and no one else can see your engagement, you know? So that algorithm basically was made to highlight and amplify white influencers, and that's it. When you go on Instagram, that's all you see. When you see an ad, you only see white influencers in the ad, you know? And like, which then leads to these ad agencies or companies or influencer outreach, and they look and they only see one type of influencer, and that's the only type of influencer that they look for, or they're not doing enough research to find Black or influencers of color. But it makes it hard to find them if Instagram isn't highlighting them in the same light that they highlight their white influencers. So it's a lot.
Yeah, wow, that seems like very complex, and they almost went out of their way too.
Right, they definitely did.
Right. How have Black influencers kind of come together to support each other and raise each other's voices? Have you seen that as a positive thing, a negative thing?
I've seen it as a positive thing for sure. It definitely now feels like everyone is a part of the community now, where it felt like it was like the white community, and then there were a few Black people sprinkled into that, and like there still wasn't that sense of community for the few Black people in that white space. But now it's like there is a space for us, and like we're screaming it from the rooftops, you know? So like everyone knows that like now there's a space. So like, you know, I have this sweet girl that follows me. I think her name's Shine Bright, like Casey Lee, I think is her Instagram. You know, she's younger, but you know, I applaud her because before all this even happened, like, you know, she did a very good job of finding influencers that would look like her, and that's all she follows. And that's all she like looks up to. And I felt like that's inspiring because it's hard to do that. Like even myself as a 26-year-old, and I think she's probably like 13, looking up influencer and trying to find like Black influencers on Instagram or just in general is not easy. And they did not make it easy. So it's nice to see now that everyone is rooting for us openly and not just behind closed doors.
Right. And that's like impressive on her part, because I'm sure her whole childhood, she's seen not people who people who didn't look like her. So that
Right.
She knew to do that.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we've talked about your IGTVs with Sophie Gold a little bit, but I saw that you announced on social media your new show. It's called Group Chat Realness. So can you tell us a little bit about what it's about?
Okay, so Sophie and I, give you a little backstory. Sophie and I guess that's 4 weeks ago now. Wow. Because we're on episode 4 starting tomorrow. 4 weeks ago, we were messaging one morning, and she is just someone that I followed on Instagram for maybe like a year or so. And I noticed that I was seeing her post less, and I sent her a DM and I said, I'm getting ready to spam your Instagram because like with likes, because I haven't seen you pop up. And she was like, I'm going to do the same. And then we started talking about in DM, like our opinions on everything that was happening on social. And we got on a call randomly, and she was like, we should do an Instagram live. And I said, okay, when? She said, tonight. I said, okay, when? She said 8:30. I said, are you sure? Like, we don't have this, like, it was me being all about the numbers. I was like, are you sure? Like, we don't have like enough time to promote it, blah, blah, blah. And she was like, no, we should just do it. And this is when it was all about amplifying Black voices. That's the day that we did the podcast, is that day when everyone put up a Black square on Instagram. I mean, the IGTV. And I had never talked to her longer than an hour before we got on Instagram TV. That was our first real conversation, besides being on the phone 15 minutes prior, deciding that this is what we were going to just do randomly.
Right.
And when we were on it, people were loving it, and they said that, you know, we should do a podcast or come back with an IGTV series. And we were like, oh, we could do a podcast, you know, like we could do that. And we decided that we were going to do that. We came up with the name, and I think last week, or was it week before last, we decided to come up with a launch date. And yeah, I think it's great. It's something that I never thought I'd actually do it. Like, I've always loved the idea of a podcast, but I just didn't think it was a world that I could step into. So I'm excited to see how it goes for us.
Yeah. Do you guys have anything outside? Well, it looks similar to your IGTVs. Where are you going to have it?
Yeah. So it'll be very similar. The only difference is that it'll just be a conversation and no video.
Okay.
We'll launch it. I think we'll still launch a new episode every Tuesday, just like how we have been doing. And kind of go from there and like see what happens. I'm super excited about it. Sophie's great.
Yeah, she's great. I had never seen her before either. I love her accent too. Is she from London?
Yeah. It's easy to fall in love with, right?
Sorry?
I said easy to fall in love with, right?
Definitely. She's a fashion influencer as well, correct?
Yes, and she's also an executive producer in LA.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, she was really fun. She's funny too.
Yeah, she is
fun
fun.
Personality. So I wrote these questions a few weeks ago, a little while ago, but my question was, what are your thoughts on the protests in the larger cities like New York and Philly compared to what you've seen in Charleston? You can expand on that, maybe just what you've seen in general compared.
I think they're all the same, honestly. I definitely was like, I didn't think Charleston wasn't going to show up and protest and fight for what was right. And I think they're great, and I think it's necessary. I was trying to find the right word. I think it's necessary for people to be able to feel like they can walk out into the street and scream and shout for what they believe is right in hopes to make a change. And I think people are now listening because of that. And that's all people wanted. Black people who wanted to feel valued. That's all that white people wanted their Black peers to feel valued. That's all they wanted, is them to be heard and to have people listen to them and for them to be treated fairly. And I don't think there's any comparison there. Like, everyone in different states want the same thing, you know?
Yeah, definitely. That's cool that you liked the people who came out to protest in Charleston compared to the numbers up there.
Yeah. And there's still protests going on, even though it's quiet on social. I think it was at Oakland. It was somewhere in California. There was a protest, almost 4 days ago. But now, of course, it's not trending, so it's not showing up on the news as much, or it's not in social as much, but people are still out here doing the groundwork. So it's good to see that people haven't given up. Charleston had one, I think a week ago. So it was nice to see that they were still even doing it, or people here were still even trying to have protests, even if they're small scale.
Right. Yeah. That's awesome. So my last question for you is, what's next for Venita Aspen, professionally and just personally?
Oh my goodness, growth. That's what's next. Everything's all about growth. My end all goal, which is something that I didn't really touch on in our conversation, is to create a lifestyle brand for disabled individuals. So that's my end all goal. Everything I'm doing right now, even though it doesn't seem like it adds up, everything I'm doing right now is leading me up to that moment. So anything I can do to grow and to continue to receive education and support and whatever else it is that I need to get there, that's what's next for me.
How are you planning to get there? What's your next first step?
Oh goodness. Well, the business plan, I just finally finished that. I guess I finished that about 3 months ago. I've just been kind of sitting on it. And I just need to figure out, okay, like, who do I reach out to first? That's where I'm stuck at right now. And like, obviously it's easy to say you can reach out to anybody, but when it comes to an idea like this, when this many people on a day-to-day basis are left out of everyday life occurrences, it's hard to know where to start, where people will take it as a serious matter and believe that an industry can be made out of it. That's the hard part. I'm stepping into an industry that really doesn't exist.
That's exciting though. Like you
Yeah.
can pave the way for what it looks like.
Right. So I'm excited for that. And that is my end all goal.
Are you planning on staying in Charleston, or you have aspirations to see other parts of the country?
Uh, I don't know yet. I just kind of go where the wind blows when it comes to that. Like,
Yeah.
I know I can always come back to Charleston, but I haven't had the desire to go anywhere else yet until I get that urge again, like how I did when I just decided I was going to up and move to New York. Until I get that urge again, that's when I'll just be here and getting it done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, good luck.
Thank you.
So where can everyone find you online and on social?
You can find me everywhere at Venita Aspen. So it's VENITA ASPEN. So my website, which is venitaaspen.com. My Instagram is at Venita Aspen. TikTok, which I don't use. You can find me there at Venita Aspen. Pinterest as well. I'm under Venita Aspen there as well. So everything's all the same.
Great.
And as far as the Aspen Agency goes, that's the aspenagency.co for the website, and at the Aspen Agency is the Instagram handle.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate you taking the time to chat with me.
Yeah, no problems. Thanks so much for having me.